This video is called The Unusual Dinner Guest. And it's because of what the Egyptians used to do at their feasts that's what this video is called. Well, they used to invite a guest that most people would not invite to their feasts. And it was a skeleton. And it was a reminder to them that one of these days they themselves would become the unusual dinner guest. Death in itself is a very frightening topic for most people. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it. But for the Christian, it is not a frightening topic. It says in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27, that it is appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment. Well, what are these judgments? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a second. But first of all, I want to talk about what happened to the apostles back in Acts chapter 5 and what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel chapter 3. Let's start with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They weren't frightened of going in that fiery furnace because they knew that if God wanted them to die, they would die right then and there, and they would be in the hands of the loving God they had been worshiping for so long. But they also knew that if God was not finished with them on this earth, they were going to walk out of that fiery furnace unscathed. Well, you read the story for yourself and see what happened to them, but believe me, you're going to like what happened. They had faith in God, and it got them through. The same thing happened in Acts chapter 5, when the apostles were flogged for giving testimony about Jesus Christ. Were they afraid of it? Certainly not. They kept giving that testimony anyway because they knew God was in charge and not the Jewish Sanhedrin. Let me tell you something. If you know that Jesus is in charge of your life, you pretty much have a game plan as to what you're going to do in this life, and then after that, you know that God's going to take you at certain time. You may not know what that time is, but God knows what that time is, and because you know He's in charge, you know nothing bad is going to happen to you unless God wants it to. That's a very comforting feeling. Do non-Christians have this feeling? No. They may think they do, but they don't. So they spend their lives, many of them, not all of them, but many of them spend their lives in total merriment just to try to brainwash themselves until the time that they are actually going to die. That's a sad way to live, I'm telling you. But anyway, death started with Adam and his rebellion, and it wasn't just Adam, it was Eve as well. They had been coerced by Satan to eat the forbidden fruit, which gave them the knowledge of good and evil. And that's why we have death today. But let's talk about the judgments. There are two judgments. One is for the Christian, one is for the non-Christian. When a Christian goes to heaven, he is giving testimony to determine his residence in heaven and to determine what his social status is going to be in heaven. The fact that he got there says that he doesn't have to worry about his sins because they're all taken care of. What he is then determining is pretty much on what street he's going to live on heaven, okay? Because heaven's going to be kind of a housing district. Jesus said, "I'm going to build mansions," and He says, "I'm going to come back and take you up there." Well, then that means that when we get to heaven, there'll be places of residence for us. And where we live in heaven is going to be determined by what we do down here. Also, our social status will be determined by what we do down here. Okay? And He mentions crowns that you can win, so on and so forth. Well, what you are adorned with in heaven will be determined by what you do down here. It's that simple. So you might want to do a pretty good job down here because you don't want to be on a lowly status level up there. Guarantee you that. All right. For the non-Christian, it's terrifying because not only are they going to spend an eternity in hell for all the sins they committed, and believe me, they're going to have to give an account for every sin they committed, but on top of all of this, they're going to be eternally separated from their Creator. And I tell you what, that's going to be absolutely terrifying for them. And you don't want to be facing a situation like that. All right. In part 2 of this video, I will go into further discussion about all this, and I want you to stay tuned.